What if I told you a $4 fiber could trap 41% of your meal sugar before it hits your blood? Not a drug, not a prescription, just a plant fiber sitting in every grocery store. Decades of research, 35 clinical trials, yet most doctors don't mention it. Stay with me. I'll show you how this simple fiber works better than some medications. 41%. That's the amount of sugar from a meal that this single fiber can capture before it even reaches your bloodstream. Not a medication, not a prescription, just a natural fiber that costs less than $4 at your local Walmart. And here's the striking part. The science behind it isn't new. Over 35 clinical studies, spanning 3 decades and 3 continents, published in some of the world's leading medical journals. So why isn't every doctor in the US recommending this to their patients with diabetes before writing another metformin refill? I'm going to explain exactly how it works and why it's so effective. 7 mechanisms are ranked, and the number 1 mechanism. Honestly, when I read the data, I had to check it twice, because the reduction it produces, it rivals some prescription medications. But first you need to understand what's actually happening inside your gut when you eat a meal. Because once you see this, you'll never look at fiber the same way again. Here's what most people don't understand about blood sugar. They think sugar goes from your mouth to your stomach to your blood, like a straight pipe. Simple. It's not simple, not even close. When you eat a meal, say a plate of rice, some bread, maybe pasta, your stomach breaks it down into a thick soupy mixture. Scientists call it Kim, and that Kim moves from your stomach into your small intestine, which is where the real action happens. Your small intestine is lined, all 23 feet of it, with tiny finger-like projections called villi. And those villi, they're the gatekeepers. They decide how fast sugar crosses from your gut into your blood. Now here's where it gets interesting, and this is the part your doctor probably never explained. If that Kim is thin, watery, moves fast, sugar floods through those villi like water through a screen door, massive spike, your pancreas panics, dumps insulin, you crash 2 hours later. But if that Kim is thick, viscous, gel-like, everything slows down. The sugar still gets absorbed. This isn't blocking it completely, but instead of a flood, it's a slow drip, gradual, controlled. Your pancreas can keep up. Your blood sugar rises gently and comes back down gently. That difference, the flood versus the drip, is the difference between a blood sugar spike of 220 and one that barely touches 140. And the compound that creates this gel, it's called psyllium husk. It comes from a plant, Plantago ovata, and it's been sitting in the fiber aisle of every grocery store in America for decades now. Let me explain something that genuinely frustrated me when I started digging into this research. The American Diabetes Association, the ADA, publishes what they call the Standards of Care. It's basically the Bible for how doctors manage diabetes in America, updated every year. And in those guidelines, fiber gets a mention, a brief one. They recommend 25 to 35 grams a day for general health. Fine, but here's what they don't do. They don't tell your doctor before you write that metformin prescription, have you tried 5g of psyllium husk before meals? They don't tell your endocrinologist this specific fiber reduced fasting blood glucose by 37 milligrams per deciliter in a meta-analysis that's comparable to first-line medication. They don't highlight the 2015 meta-analysis from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition that reviewed 35 randomized controlled trials and concluded, and I'm not exaggerating this, that psyllium's glycemic benefit was proportional to the loss of glycemic control, meaning the worse your blood sugar, the more dramatically it helps. That study found that in type 2 diabetics, fasting glucose dropped 37 milligrams per deciliter. A 1C dropped nearly a full percentage point. These aren't marginal numbers. These are the kinds of numbers that get drugs approved. And yet, what does your doctor reach for first? A prescription pad. Now look, I'm not here to bash doctors. Most of them are working inside a system that doesn't leave time for nutritional counseling. They've got 15 minutes with you, they've got treatment algorithms to follow, and those algorithms start with medication. But I think you deserve to know what the research actually says. And then you and your doctor can make that decision together. Fair? All right. Let me show you the 7 ways psyllium husk protects your blood sugar. I'm ranking these from number 7, the least powerful, up to number 1. And number 1, I got to be honest, even I didn't believe it at first. Stay with me on this one. Number 7, it slows your stomach emptying. This is the foundation, the baseline, and most people skip right past it. When you take psyllium husk with water, and I mean adequate water, this is critical. I'll explain why later. It swells massively. It can absorb up to 40 times its own weight in water. And when that gel hits your stomach says, "Whoa, this is a lot of volume. I need more time." Research shows that gastric emptying accounts for roughly 35% of the variation in how high your blood sugar peaks after a meal. 35%. That's from a study examining the factors behind peak glucose concentrations after oral glucose ingestion. So before we even talk about what happens in your intestines, the simple act of slowing your stomach down, that alone makes a measurable difference. But this is just the entry point. Number 6 is where the real science starts. Number 6, it blocks enzyme access to your carbohydrates. Here's something most people, including a lot of doctors, don't fully appreciate. Your body can't absorb starch directly. It has to break it down first into simple sugars, and the enzyme responsible for that alpha amylase. It's produced by your pancreas and your saliva glands. Now, when psyllium gel surrounds the food in your stomach and small intestine, it does something remarkable. It physically increases the thickness of the mixture. The viscosity goes up. And when viscosity goes up, alpha amyla can't reach the starch molecules as easily. Think of it this way. Imagine trying to stir honey versus water. In water, everything mixes instantly. In honey, it takes time, effort. The same thing is happening at a molecular level inside your gut. Research using controlled in vitro models showed that when the viscosity of the food mixture increased from 1 millipascal second to 15, the conversion of maltodextrin to glucose was reduced by 35%. That means just by making the chyme thicker, your body produces 35% less glucose from the same amount of food. Same meal, same carbs, 35% less sugar hitting your blood. And the drug companies can't patent a plant fiber. So number 5, it coats your intestinal wall. This one is, I don't know, it's almost elegant in how simple it is. Remember those villi I mentioned? The finger-like projections lining your small intestine? Well, between the villi and the food mixture, there's a thin layer of fluid. Scientists call it the unread water layer. It's basically a buffer zone. Sugar has to diffuse through this layer before it can be absorbed. When psyllium gel is present, it thickens that layer dramatically. It creates a physical barrier, not a chemical one, not a pharmaceutical one, a physical barrier between the sugar in your food and the absorption points in your intestine. A study published in the journal Gut back in 1981, and this finding has been replicated many times since, showed that gel-forming gums significantly reduced sugar transport across the intestinal wall when the gel was chemically broken down, so it couldn't form that viscous layer anymore. The blood sugar reduction disappeared completely. It's the gel. It's always been the gel. No gel, no benefit. And this is where I need to warn you, because if you're taking psyllium in capsule form, you might not be getting this effect. Capsules dissolve unpredictably. They may not create the gel matrix you need. I'll come back to this in the action plan. Now, everything I've explained so far covers what happens during the day when you eat meals and your body processes sugar in real time. But there's a whole other side to this. What happens at night while you sleep, when your liver starts dumping glucose into your blood without you eating anything at all? That's actually something I wrote a full guide about. It's called the Midnight Insulin Trap. I'll leave the link in the description. But right now, let's keep going, because number 4 is where things start getting really interesting. Number 4, the second meal effect. Okay, this one blew my mind when I first saw the data, and I think it'll surprise you too. In 1991, researchers at the University of Kentucky studied 18 diabetic patients. They gave them psyllium before breakfast and before dinner. But here's the key. They did not give psyllium before lunch on purpose. They wanted to see, does the benefit carry over to the next meal even when you don't take it again? The answer was yes. At breakfast, where psyllium was taken, blood sugar elevation dropped 14%. At dinner, also with psyllium, it dropped 20%. But at lunch, with no psyllium at all, blood sugar elevation still dropped by 31%. 31% reduction at a meal where they took nothing. The researchers called this the second meal effect. And here's what's happening. The psyllium from breakfast continued to influence gut motility, hormone signaling, and the rate of carbohydrate digestion hours after it was consumed. This means, and listen carefully, you don't necessarily need to take psyllium before every single meal. If you take it properly before breakfast, it's still protecting you at lunch. I want you to think about that, because how many medications can do that? How many medications keep working at a meal you didn't even take them for? Number 3, it drops fasting blood glucose by 37 milligrams per deciliter. Now we're getting into territory that directly competes with medication. And I don't say that lightly. The 2015 meta-analysis I mentioned earlier, published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, pulled data from 35 randomized controlled clinical trials, 3 decades of research, thousands of patients across 3 continents, in patients with type 2 diabetes. Those who took psyllium before meals for multiple weeks showed a mean reduction in fasting blood glucose of 37 milligrams per deciliter compared to controls. That's statistically significant at p less than 0.001. Let me put that in perspective. If your fasting blood sugar is 180, this reduction alone could bring you to 143 without changing your medication, without changing what you eat, just by adding the right fiber at the right time in the right form. And I know a lot of you watching this are on metformin. Some of you have been on it for 10, 15, even 20 years. I'm not going to tell you to stop taking it. That's between you and your doctor. But what I am going to show you is what happens when you add psyllium alongside it, because the research on this and your doctor may not have time to pull up that study, but I did. And the data says the benefit is additive. It works on top of medication, not instead of it on top. Number 2, it reduces A1C without changing medication. Alright, this is the one that matters most to a lot of you, because I know you track your A1C. You know that number, you probably know it better than your doctor does, and here's what the same meta-analysis found. In patients with type 2 diabetes, psyllium taken before meals reduced A1C by nearly a full percentage point. We're talking about 0.97%. That's almost 1 full point. Now you and I both know what your endocrinologist says when your A1C drops a full point. They congratulate you, they talk about reducing medication, they use words like remarkable progress, and the patients in these studies, they achieved that with a fiber supplement. A separate study out of Spain followed 20 type 2 diabetic patients, average age 67. They added psyllium to their existing treatment. Glucose absorption decreased significantly by 12% directly measured. Fructosamine dropped by almost 11%. Total cholesterol came down nearly 8%. LDL dropped over 9%. One addition, one fiber, multiple systems improving simultaneously. And if you're living with type 1, I see you. Most of what I'm covering today applies to type 2 and pre-diabetes specifically, but the viscosity mechanism, the gel trapping sugar and slowing absorption, that applies regardless of type. It's physics, not pharmacology. And that's the part that frustrates me, because this overnight piece, this is what catches most people off guard. You do everything right during the day. You take your psyllium, your numbers look great after meals, and then you wake up at 6 a.m. and the number's high anyway. That right there is why I wrote the Midnight Insulin Trap. It covers what actually happens to your blood sugar and blood pressure while you sleep, and how to build a nighttime system that works with your body instead of against it. Link is in the description. But let me finish showing you the number 1 mechanism, because this is the one that changes everything. Number 1, the gel trap. Up to 41% sugar absorption reduction. This is it, the pinnacle, and it combines everything we've talked about. The slowed stomach emptying, the enzyme blocking, the intestinal coating, all of it working together into one measurable outcome. A 2022 review published in the journal Foods analyzed clinical trials on soluble dietary fibers and their impact on the glycemic response. When researchers tested arabinoxyline, a soluble fiber that operates through the same viscous gel mechanism as psyllium, they measured the area under the curve for blood glucose response. That's the total amount of sugar absorbed over a 2-hour window after a meal. The reduction 41.4%. 4%. Let me say that again. 41% less sugar entering the bloodstream from the exact same meal just because a viscous fiber was present. Not a drug, not insulin, not metformin, a fiber that forms a gel in your gut. And psyllium. Psyllium is one of the most viscous, most gel-forming fibers we know of. It's 70% soluble fiber, and unlike other fibers, oat bran, wheat fiber, inulin, psyllium doesn't ferment rapidly in your colon. It maintains its gel structure throughout your entire digestive tract. That's why it works better than most other fibers for blood sugar. Not because it has some magical chemical property, but because it stays intact. It holds the gel from stomach to small intestine to colon, the whole journey. And the cost? $3 to $4 for a canister at Walmart, CVS, Target, any grocery store in America. You probably walk past it every single week. So I'll ask again, why isn't this the first thing your doctor recommends? Now stop, because this is the section that could save you from a serious mistake. And I mean that. If you're going to use psyllium, and I think you should talk to your doctor about it, you need to know what not to do, because there are 4 combinations that can cancel the benefit or worse, put you at risk. Mistake number 1. Taking psyllium at the same time as your medication. This is the big one. Psyllium's gel doesn't just trap sugar, it can trap your medication. If you take metformin, blood pressure pills, thyroid medication, or any prescription drug at the same time as psyllium, the gel can bind to that medication and reduce how much your body absorbs. The fix: take your medication at least 2 hours before or 2 hours after psyllium, not 1 hour, 2 minimum. This isn't optional. Mistake number 2, not drinking enough water. Remember, psyllium swells to 40 times its weight in water. If you take it without adequate water, it doesn't form a gel. It forms a dry mass, and that mass can cause bloating, cramping, and in rare but serious cases, intestinal blockage. Every dose of psyllium needs a full 8 ounces glass of water minimum. Then follow it with another glass within 30 minutes. This isn't a suggestion, this is a safety requirement. Mistake number 3, taking the capsule form and expecting the same result. I mentioned this earlier, capsules are convenient. I get it, but many capsule forms dissolve inconsistently. They don't always create the uniform gel matrix that the research is based on. The clinical trials, the ones showing these dramatic results, almost exclusively used powdered psyllium husk mixed in water. If you want the gel, if you want the 41%, use the powder, mix it in water, drink it. That's how the science was done. Mistake number 4, starting with too much too fast. Your gut needs time to adjust. If you go from 0 fiber to 10 g of psyllium overnight, you're going to have gas, bloating, discomfort, and you'll probably quit. Start with 1 teaspoon, roughly 3½ g, once a day before your largest meal. Give it a week, then add a second dose before another meal. Build gradually over 2 to 3 weeks. Your gut bacteria will adapt. The discomfort will fade. And if you have any history of intestinal strictures, difficulty swallowing or bowel obstruction, talk to your doctor first. This is not one of those try it and see situations for people with those conditions. Alright, here's your plan. Simple. Starting today. Step 1. Buy a canister of unsweetened, unflavored psyllium husk powder. Walmart carries it, so does CVS, Target, and Sam's Club. Store brand is fine. You're looking for psyllium husk as the only ingredient. Should cost less than $4. Step 2. Starting tomorrow morning, 15 minutes before your biggest meal of the day, mix 1 teaspoon, that's about 3½ g, into a full 8 ounces glass of water. Stir it fast. Drink it within 2 minutes before it gels up in the glass. Then drink another glass of plain water. Step 3. After 1 week, if you're tolerating it well, add a second dose before another meal. You're building toward 2 doses a day. That's the range the clinical trials used. Step 4. Keep a log. Write down your fasting blood sugar every morning. Most of you are already doing this. After 2 weeks, compare. If the research holds true for your body, and it does for most people, you should see movement. Step 5. At your next doctor's appointment, bring the log, show them, and have a conversation about what this means for your overall plan. Maybe your medication stays the same. Maybe it changes. That's their call. But you deserve to walk in with data. 3 days. That's all it takes to feel the difference. 2 weeks to see it in your numbers. Less than $4 to start. Now one more thing before you go. If this video covered what happens during the day, how to trap sugar before it hits your blood at meals, then the question you should be asking is, what happens at night? Because for most people over 70, the nighttime hours are when the real damage happens. Your liver starts producing glucose at 2, 3, 4 in the morning. Your cortisol shifts. Your blood sugar rises while you're asleep, and no amount of daytime fiber changes that. That is exactly why I created the Midnight Insulin Trap. It walks you through what changes in your body after 60, why your morning numbers are high even when you ate perfectly the day before, and how to build a simple nighttime system. Food timing, meal structure, a 7-day reset you can start tonight. The link is below this video. I think you'll find it answers questions your doctor doesn't have time to explain. Now look, I showed you today that a $4 fiber can reduce meal sugar absorption by up to 41%. That's not opinion, that's 35 clinical trials. If that made you angry, if you're sitting there thinking, why has nobody told me this in 20 years of doctor visits, drop the words "I deserve the truth" in the comments right now. Because you do. And if you're living with type 1, drop "type 1 matters," so I know to keep including you. I see every single one of those comments. Now, which number shocked you the most? Was it the second meal effect, the A1C reduction, the 41% gel trap? Tell me below. And if this helped you understand how fiber actually works inside your body, I made another video about the 7 worst foods for stroke that honestly I almost didn't publish because the number 1 food on that list, you eat it every single day, and it has nothing to do with salt. Well, I'll see you there.